Hey, this is Jason Falls.
Hey, this is Mari Smith.
Hey everybody, this is CC Chapman.
Hey, this is Jason Keith.
Michael Stelzner here.
Hi there, I'm Rand Fishkin.
Hey, this is John Jantz.
Hey, it's Jay Bear.
Hey, this is Brian Solis.
Hi, this is David Wells, and you're watching Inbound Now with... Hi, this is Seth Godin, and you're watching Inbound Now with David Wells.
Welcome to another episode of Inbound Now. I have a very special guest with me here today, Mr. Lee Odden. Lee runs Top Rank Online Marketing, a digital marketing agency. And he also runs one of my favorite blogs on the web, Top Rank Blog. I've been reading it for years and years and years, and I'm really excited to get him on. He's one of my marketing heroes. So welcome to the show, Lee.
Thanks, David. It's really good to be here.
Awesome. So you recently published a book called Optimize. I see it above your head there. Shameless
right
plug.
there.
Strategically placed product placement. I like it.
Absolutely. There's no coincidence there whatsoever.
Wanted to get you on the show today to talk a little bit about the key concepts in your book and really dive into how you kind of lay out a holistic approach to people continuously optimizing their online marketing practices and making their businesses more customer centric. In the first chapter, you talk about how optimization is a state of mind. So how can marketers really adopt this principle of, adopting optimization as an actual state of mind, rethinking how they do things normally?
Sure. So sort of like the Zen of internet marketing. Well, what that has to do with is people think of the word optimize, the notion of optimization. Often it's associated with search engine optimization, and that can get very siloed and very specific, keyword-centric, very tactical, and people kind of get lost in that. It becomes a bit of an egocentric sort of world. A lot of SEO folks think of things only in terms of, well, that's not good for SEO. That's not good for SEO, and really don't necessarily think about, well, this is a bigger picture situation, really. The ability to drive traffic or attract and engage customers digitally. I had interaction with someone at Google that kind of prompted some of this. There are two stories right away in the book that actually reflect this sort of optimized state of mind thing. One was, actually I'll step back a little bit. One was a story related to a tradition in our family. I have 3 kids, and when they turn 10 years old, they get to go on a daddy trip anywhere in the United States. They just have to pick where and why. And my oldest son decided he wanted to go to New York. So, okay, great. I go to New York often for business, but I really don't know what's to do in New York from a kid-friendly standpoint. So I went to Twitter. Twitter's very new at the time, and said, hey, Tweeple, what's kid-friendly to do in New York? I have no idea. And people made all kinds of recommendations, and went to Facebook, did the same thing. And so socially, we're able to source ideas, and then we went over to Google to find out, okay, well, where are these places? What are their hours of operation? How much does it cost? What can you actually do there? And stuff like that. And we built out this kind of cool itinerary. So when we got to New York and we went and did these things, we took photos and shared them socially, so the people who actually made their recommendations were able to see the actual impact that they had on this really great experience for this 10-year-old kid who's in one of the greatest cities in the world. And it really, was a great example of living this sort of journey, customer journey in a way, between search and social. And I thought at the time, this is really where things are going. And I saw in our own consulting with clients that more and more refer information was not only coming just from search engines and direct traffic, but also from social sites. And SEO wasn't so much a linear path, customers going, oh, I need a Bluetooth headset, and I go and type that in on Google. Oh, there's one. There's another one. That one's cheaper. Bing, I transact.
Right.
And increasingly, the expectation is not just to find what you're looking for, but to interact with it. And so, well, how do we take advantage of that as marketers? And I think optimized state of mind has to do with this notion of empathizing with customers and what's their journey, what's the experience like for them, and being able to stay on top of all these different changes that are happening through search and social applications. You've got to have an optimized state of mind to really make sense out of all that. And that optimized state of mind has to do with viewing things holistically. What's not only the effect of the individual content or social object you're creating, but how are they connected with each other? And how can we always be viewing what we're doing in terms of making it better? That's what optimization means, is to make better, to make perfect on an ongoing basis. What kind of data can we tap into? What kind of customer insights can we tap into to always be making what it is that we're doing more effective and more efficient? And that's really, in a way, where Optimized State of Mind. The other thing in naming the book Optimized was I was talking to a Google engineer, and she was giving a presentation. Afterwards, I remarked how awesome her speaking skills had become since the first time I saw her. And I also remarked that my speaking skills were, not so great, or that's how I felt they were. And she asked me a very, very important question. She said, well, you optimize web pages for better performance, don't you? Yeah. And why don't you optimize your speaking skills? And I thought, if you're going to rely, it also made me think of what the true meaning of optimize was. And that's why I named the book what I named it, because I saw it as a reflection of how we approach marketing from a holistic perspective, not just SEO, social, content, PR, email, and so forth.
Gotcha. So it's an iterative process. Always
Yes.
keep in mind everything that you do kind of optimize. And I totally agree with you. Even if it marketing and self-improvement and what have you, I think that's dead on. And a lot of people don't really look at it that way. But speaking, in terms of marketing and what have you, in chapter 4 you talk about setting objectives, right? So there's a lot of different goals and benchmark people can measure their activities around. And there's a lot of time that can be wasted in the same genre, right? What are some things that you look for? What are some benchmarks that are like an absolute must for clients?
Well, because we work in the content area and we're really not advertising focused, we're thinking about content metrics in terms of how they're able to help achieve business goals. But on the way, we'll identify KPIs to measure progress towards those goals, like, the whole fans, friends, followers, links, rankings, organic search referred traffic, right, and stuff like that. But in terms of business goal, clearly we're going to look at the ability for the content to propagate. Is it actually reaching the people that we're trying to reach? And how is that reflected in terms of actions, whether ultimately it's a micro conversion, like signing up for a newsletter or white paper download, webinar, subscribing to a video channel or something like that. And then an actual business impact sort of outcome, like a sale or the sales cycle length being shortened, if that's our objective, or order frequency, order quantity, retention, things like that we'll look at as outcomes. And so the benchmark measurement, of course, is something that you take up front to identify, okay, we want to achieve this, and here's where we're at right now. And then we just take those continuous measurements against that objective as we're trying to make progress towards it.
Gotcha. So is it different for every client that you work with? You set different kind of benchmarks and goals, or is it pretty much, it's very typical across the board?
In the book, I talk about not only marketing objectives, but also because content is prevalent throughout an organization, and we create content as companies for many different reasons. Objective those other departments beyond marketing, like public relations, customer service, and even HR and recruiting. So the engagement does have some variances, or the client relationship and what they're looking for can have some variances in terms of what our objectives and benchmarks are. It really depends on what they're looking for. A tenured company that's got lots and lots of momentum going in the marketplace, but understands they're really leaving a lot of money on the table because they're not efficient about what they're doing. Our objectives there may be quite a bit different in terms of our ability to make improvements or create efficiencies with interdepartmental teams and getting them to work together collaboratively as opposed to in silos, and what the outcome might be in terms of more efficient content production and working with public relations and stuff like that, versus a startup company. Nobody knows who they are. They have no money and they need sales right now. That's a very different thing. So we might be focusing more on publicity and viral social propagation, kind of building up excitement and notoriety so they can attract sales right away and start to use that as a foundation against which we'll develop a more robust content plan.
Gotcha. So another piece of the book that kind of relates to what you just said is, developing customer personas around, your exact target audience. And I think a lot of businesses don't really think about it in very finite terms. So like how important would you say it is to develop a content persona around your prospective audience? And is it key, or is it a nice thing to have? I mean, what's your opinion there?
I think customer insight is absolutely essential. A lot of, let's say, SEO advice is, as an example, or even content advice is either determined by, I'll pick content. A lot of people are publishing content purely as an articulation of their features and benefits, right? We've got red and blue widgets to sell, so let's put up web pages about those things. Go. And use advertising and PR or email or whatever to attract traffic to that content, hoping, please, that it's going to convert. And so that's a very egocentric, egocentric view from a corporation standpoint about what to publish. So that's going to run out of it. The effectiveness of that is going to be limited compared to understanding why do people buy red widgets? Why do they buy green widgets or blue widgets? How can we articulate what they can get, how they can get more out of buying those widgets? What different life events happen, or what prompts someone to have to need one of these widgets in the first place, and how are people using them creatively, and so on and so forth. So if we understand what's the customer objective for buying our product, what's their goal, what goal is met by them buying that product, and also empathizing the journey that they would take typically to arrive at a transaction, if we can do that, and we can map that out and develop an editorial plan accordingly, now we're connected directly to where that source of revenue is, and we're not distracted by, some of the, self-serving, chest-beating stuff that can go on that people think you're supposed to do, and focusing more on the things that will actually drive customer engagement, not only for customer acquisition, but also for things like inspiring referrals and word-of-mouth advocacy and those sorts of things.
How do you specifically map out those things? Is it, interviewing, current customers, doing market research? How do you go about finding those insights?
You hire a really smart consultant that has the word inbound in their name somewhere. I think that's a good idea. You can get outside help if you can, I think, because if you were good at it, you'd be doing it already. I think doing surveys of customers is one thing. Usually with customer segmentation, you've got to rely on data. So if you have information about who your customers are, how they typically arrive at interacting with your content, what types of products they're buying, what the price points are, is it a repeat purchase sort of situation? You can look at other sources of information based on, let's say, their email addresses. You can bring them into a social media email appending service that can tell you where, if you have a list of 10,000 prospects or customers or whatever, you can identify what social networks most of them are spending most of their time on, or at least where they're registered. That can help you make some decisions about what social networks to spend your time on. You can look at other web analytics data, social media monitoring, and kind of bring that all in and start to develop an idea about what are some of the common characteristics of your best customers. What is it that they buy, and where are they from, and demographic, behavioral, that kind of information, and start to get sort of an idea of what it is that typifies them. What's the archetype? And if you want to go ahead and label them with a persona or personality, that's fine. You don't have to do that, but at least have some sort of characterization of who your best customers are. At the same time, who are your worst customers so that you don't optimize for them. You want to focus, obviously, on who's going to make you money that you can help at the same time. And you could obviously have 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on the type of business you have, many different defined customer segments. But collecting data and defining those segments is not a one-time thing. It's something that you have to revisit on an ongoing basis and refine, because we're dealing with common sets of characteristics. It's not an actual human being. So Bob and Sally, they're not always going to be Bob and Sally. They're going to change. They're going to have personality changes, so to speak. So you've got to revisit those data sources on a regular basis and refine them to make sure that you're doing things in a meaningful way.
So how do you guys at Top Rank create your content towards your different target personas?
I've got this really giant dartboard right here. I know you can't see it, but and then I've got these different topics on it, and we throw a dart at it. No, I really do have this weird thing I should show you, but anyway. No, what we do is we have a plan. We have a editorial plan that's set up according to what it is that we want to be known for. Also what we know what people are looking for that we want to do business with. Because all of our new business comes to us, we don't use advertising and we don't do anything outbound, have any salespeople or anything like that. What we're doing is trying to educate our customers to a point of having them basically nurture themselves all the way nearly to transaction. So by the time someone actually calls us or fills out a form, they'll say things like, I've read your blog, I've seen you speak, read some articles, talked to some of your customers. We have a project. When, would you like to work with us? That's the way it's been for over 10 years. And the way we help encourage that to happen is by identifying some of those key topics that are problems the business owners that we want to do business with are having. And so we have a fixed editorial plan of what we write about on the blog and some of the other things we're doing as far as content, but we also allow for wildcards because things just come up. The other day, yet another PR person sent me a crappy pitch, and I thought, okay, I got to write about this, and I did. And Smart Brief of Social Media actually passed it along, so it got a big spike in traffic this morning. Nice. Ironically, I got another pitch from some other PR firm doing the exact same thing, and I was able to reply with just a link to my blog post. I hope they got the message. But what we're after is simply understanding what it is that people want and giving it to them, and by educating them through their journey, they've decided on their own whether we're someone they want to work with or not.
I saw a recent interview you did where you were talking about the somewhat recent Google SSL changes, where you can no longer see the organic, the majority of your organic traffic is unknown, right? What are you guys doing to kind of counteract that? Because I have the same exact problem. I'm sure a lot of the viewers do as well. Like, I used to use that to kind of gauge the interest in different topics and what have you I was writing about on my blog. Now it's an unknown, variable. How are you guys kind of counteract that?
So if you're actively, in an accountable way, optimizing your website for keywords or topics or whatever, there should be a keyword glossary. There should be a mapping of those keywords to different content areas on your website. So at a minimum, what you can do is identify, okay, here are the cluster of pages related to topic XYZ. And because now I can't tell what keywords are actually, I can tell a small percentage of the overall traffic that's actually using those keywords to drive traffic to that page or that group of pages. But what I can tell is how much organic search traffic is going to those pages. That's not going away. Or, the fact that it's organic versus paid or something else. So in our case, it's all organic or direct traffic or social traffic. So I can tell, okay, I've optimized this cluster of pages for topic XYZ, and I can see the traffic is going up. Organic search traffic is going up. So I can assume what we're optimizing for is actually working in terms of driving topic-specific traffic to that content. We still look at, to some degree, ranking reports as a relative measure over time. We don't necessarily share those as a metric from a month over time. What is a logged out experience like for someone in a very generic way? Clearly, every time anybody searches, anytime anybody searches from a different part of the country, let alone in the world, they're going to have a different search experience potentially, whether they're logged in or not. Right. But that's we're grasping for usable data here, so that's another source. And the other thing is to look at Google Webmaster Tools and get an idea of how many impressions you're getting on those phrases that you're actually optimizing for. That doesn't necessarily connect to click-throughs, but it's a touch point. It's an interaction opportunity. It may or may not happen, but if you look at the Google Webmaster Tools keyword data, you look at the little amount of actual referral data that's coming in from people who aren't logged into Google, and you look at your keyword glossary mapped to content that you're optimizing for and the fluctuations or progress in terms of organic search traffic to that content, we can start to develop a picture of some sort of alignment between, all right, this is what we're optimizing for, and this is basically the potential impact of it. Cool. I know that's a lot, but
No, it was a very specific question. It's something that's been bothering me because like 98% of my traffic is unknown to me, and I have the historical data to look back on and kind of make that guest. So back to blogging, because you've written several thousand posts on Top Rank blog over the years. You're what I would consider a prolific writer. What advice do you have to people? And I think the debate is over where, people are like, oh, I don't know about this blogging thing. I don't know if it works. I think that's over and everyone sees the value in it. It's just actually sitting down and actually writing those posts and targeting that content towards your specific audience. So what advice could you give business owners that are struggling to kind of get the pen down to paper, as it were?
I think blogging's like a muscle. You've got to stretch it out. You've got to exercise it. And you've got to mix it up a little bit. If you do the exact same exercise over and over and over again, you're going to get burned out. And clearly, if you don't warm up, you can get an injury. And I think that's a bit of a metaphor for effective blogging long term. You're right. I've done about 2,400 blog posts. So I'm looking forward to hitting 2,500 here sometime soon. 1.2 million words over the last 8 years. And this is coming from someone who's, I didn't go to school for anything to do with writing whatsoever, really. I have a sociology degree, sociology/business. That's kind of like jumbo shrimp, but they don't really go together. They do today, but they didn't go together when I was going to college because there was no social media, obviously, way back then. But my advice for someone that's new to blogging is think about what it is that your target audience cares about. And I mean, a lot of blogging personally is a expression of interest personally. So clearly, topically, you want to focus on things that you care about, but each person is sort of a vessel and you're going to run out of ideas eventually. So you've got to be socially active in your community. You've got to be interacting or commenting, doing things with other folks that are writing about the same thing, so you can get new ideas, So think of something that you're really, truly passionate about that's in alignment with whatever your business goals are. I'm assuming your question is related to business blogging. Right. And then also tap into the never-ending stream of ideas that can come from community engagement and participation. Think about, again, what is it that your audience that you're after, what is it that they care about? I was talking to Jay Baer the other day, and we did an interview, and he said, hey, it says in here that you're identifying specific things that you should write about according to your target audience. And he's like, I just write about what I think is important, hope someone agrees with me. Right. And you know what? Both of them work because Jay's got a very popular blog. But I'm more intentional about it because this is one of the main tools that we use to create awareness of who we are in the marketplace. I have a small business, 20-some people, but we have a footprint of a 200-person agency. Easy. And that's all accomplished through blogging. So what I've been able to do, or it's not just me, clearly, like Ashley Zeckman has been priceless for helping out on the blog. Actually, she project managed the book as well. And there are other team members at Top Rank that are also contributing to the blog. And that team effort is really what makes it special in terms of people understanding what the personality or flavor is of our agency. So if you're new and you're starting to blog, I think the best advice is to find something you're interested in. If you have others around you that can help you, try and get them on board as well, and make sure you give them good feedback and reinforce that they did a good job, and try and tie into community feedback as well, because people will work for a living, but they'll die for recognition. So you've got to keep that feedback mechanism in there.
So one last thing I wanted to dive into before we wrap up here, and that was in Chapter 12, you talk about electrifying your content and with promotion and link building, right? So link building is definitely a critical part of any online marketing strategy. What have you seen from your experience, some of the best ways to actually build and seed those inbound links coming into either your site or a client's site?
Well, there's best in terms of whatever your objective is, and I would avoid purely SEO objectives just because that's what Google's very focused at obliterating. Right. I think that the kind of link building that you're talking about is the kind that actually drives traffic directly. It is the source of the link is usually something from a exposure standpoint that would be very positive and beneficial for you to be associated with. So in a way, I guess I'd call, the kind of link building people should be thinking about is more like publicity than anything. certainly you can take a look at who's linking to your competitors that are doing really well in search that are not linking to you, right? Who's linking to your competition, not linking to you. That can uncover some opportunities. That's called backlink analysis. It's the oldest form of link building, and it's very tedious unless you're using some tools. But beyond that, you've got to think about what are some creative content types and formats that are doing really well in your category. What is it that people are sharing? And by the way, social sharing. So you've got to think of both links from other web pages to your site as well as the social share. They work hand in hand. It's yin and yang. You've got to do both. So if you're creating really great content, something that's unique that people can't find elsewhere, and promote it, you've got to build into your content creation structure and process that you will also be promoting that content as well. And I talk about in the book a hub and spoke model, where you have a deep repository of content, which I like to use blogs for, at the centerpiece as the hub, and then the spokes are channels of distribution. So every time I make a blog post, it automatically goes out to Twitter and LinkedIn, and manually post to Facebook and Google Plus and Pinterest, and maybe it gets repurposed as a newsletter or used in a SlideShare deck, a press release through PR Web or someone like that. Right. These are all very, very effective channels. And the idea is, you're creating great content. It's like making a promise. And if you deliver on that promise, people will just wait to see what you're going to publish next. And it starts to become a situation where you're creating your own weather link building, because people will just naturally they'll naturally link to you. I haven't asked anybody for a link. I haven't done traditional link building in many, many years.
Right.
And if you go to Google right now and you search for online marketing, and you're not logged into Google, look at what's in number one out of 1.2 billion search results. Yeah. But you know what? It's not just number one, it's number 4 as well. And that's not through any link building, at least in the last 3 or 4 years at all. It's all through publicity, creating content, and engaging with social communities.
Once you build up that kind of critical mass, and you're creating content on a regular basis, it's awesome stuff. You're going to get those links organically. And then I would say another way to kind of seed it would be guest posting on other sites if you're kind of starting out. Lee, I appreciate your time. Where can people find you online?
Oh, they can type in Lee Odden, O-D-D-E-N, and you can find all kinds of crazy stuff. Optimizebook.com, or you could type in Optimize. You should be able to type in Optimize on Bing or on Google. Our blog, of course, is toprankedblog.com, and that's where all those articles have been published over the last 8 years or so, mostly on search, social, and content marketing related topics.
And thanks for coming on.
Thanks, David.